Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Potted Player Entertainment. My name is Chris, and in case you don't know, I review movies and I rank them on a scale of 0 to 100 in increments of 5. Today, we're going to be talking about an amazing movie that I wish I had watched more often growing up. This movie is The Sandlot. The Sandlot, I remember watching this movie when I was a kid. I watched it one summer with my family, and it was the longest day of the year. And so I remember when it was over, I looked out the window and I was surprised that it still wasn't dark out yet. But this was the only time I had ever seen this movie, and then I rewatched it the other day, and it was even better than I remember it being. The Sandlot is it's one of those family movies that you could actually consider to be a family movie because a lot of family movies are just movies that really the kids can get into. But this is a family movie that your kids and you will both love. And that's rare. You don't get that a lot. Um, but it came out in '93 and it bombed at the box office. Okay, but then like it began to develop a fan base through like VHS rentals at like Blockbuster and stuff like that. Like it's not the only movie to gain traction that way. The Shawshank Redemption did as well. It bombed at the box office, but now it's considered to be the best movie ever made. So The Sandlot has a similar story, and it even came out around the same time. I think it only came out like a year prior. Um, and it just gained a cult following, and now it's like a really, really beloved movie that everyone talks about. So let's talk about Sandlot. Came out in '93, and it stars Tom Geary, Mike Vitar, Art LaFleur, Karen Allen, Patrick Rena, James Earl Jones, Dennis Leary, Chauncey Labarty, Marty York, Brian Quinton Adams, Grant Gelt, Shane Odensky, and Victor DiMattia. It was directed by David Mickey Evans and was produced by Mark Berg and Kathleen Summers. Now, before I get into this, I do want to say that if you have not seen The Sandlot, I'm going to get into spoilers, so that's your warning. Um, so the movie tells the story. It takes place in 1962, and this kid moves into this neighborhood from I think out of state, and he doesn't have any friends. Right, so he goes to this baseball field where he sees some neighborhood kids playing baseball, and he tries to play with them, but he's really bad at it. And one of them, who's pretty much like the leader of the group, he feels bad for him, and so he invites him back and he teaches him how to play baseball. And it's about their misadventures throughout this summer. Later on in the summer, they hit a baseball up over this fence, and on the other side of this fence is this dog that they are terrified of because they have heard rumors that that dog eats people. And so it goes over the fence, and they're like, okay, we don't have a baseball. So the main kid is like, wait a minute, have a baseball. I'm going to go get it. So he goes home to get it, and what it really is, it's his stepdad's baseball that was signed by the Babe Ruth, probably the most famous baseball player who ever lived. It's signed by him. And the kids, he hits it over the fence. And so these kids now have to try and get this baseball back without the dog killing them. Now, there are theories about this movie that say that really, like, this movie is greatly exaggerated from the kids' minds, and really, it didn't really happen the way you see it, because the kids it's sort of like told through the mind of a child, and so everything's like really exaggerated. It's a good fan theory, but we don't actually know this. But really, it doesn't matter. This is a very unrealistic movie at a lot of points, but it's similar to Jaws. No shark really behaves the way that Jaws does, but it has to in order for the movie to work. It's the same thing here. So a lot of stuff you see in this movie, it's like, that doesn't quite happen, but it has to in order for the movie to work. Home Alone is another movie like that. You know, the burglars really would have just busted in that house and killed the kid, but they can't do that in order for the movie to work. So anyway, so it's similar to that. Yeah, like I said, some people think that like the movie is exaggerated on purpose to be like it's told through the mind of a child, which is a good theory. But that's one of the things I love about the movie is that it is told through the mind of a child. This movie gets kids. I love movies that get children, that don't sugarcoat children to make them seem super innocent. That's one of the reasons why I like Stand By Me so much, is because those kids feel real. Kids like to cuss because they think it's cool. You know what I mean? So like I like movies that make kids feel like real children. In this movie, and this is something I feel like I'm the only person who's ever given this movie credit for. This movie stays away from the older bully stereotype. When you look at Stand By Me and It, there's this older bully that's picking on the group. This movie shies away from that stereotype because it so easily could have gone into that. And that's not even necessarily a bad thing. I just think it helps the movie stand out a little bit more. Um, It's a very nostalgic movie. Now, one of the things I've heard that critics didn't like this movie, and one of the things I heard that they didn't like it for is because they said it was too nostalgic. I think it's perfect the way it is, honestly. And this movie is nostalgic for a lot of because a lot of us grew up with this. I didn't exactly grow up with it, but I did see it once from beginning to end when I was a kid, and I really, really enjoyed it. I just wish I had watched it more. I don't know why I didn't. One of the things I love is that every kid in this group has a personality. There's 9 of them. They're a big group of friends, and each one of them has a personality and a purpose. And they all feel real. They feel lived in. Like they feel like they've been there before. And so they give more convincing performances, which leads me to my next pro. These kids are really good in this movie. They are all do a fantastic job. They're really, really good in this movie. And again, that's always a good thing because a lot of child actors just are not that good. I know the typical example that people like to go to is the Phantom Menace, but when you get like really good child actors, I think that's something to really be celebrate, just like this movie and Jurassic Park and of course Stand By Me. I love the situations that these kids find themselves in. This movie takes place all throughout the course of one summer. And the situations that the kids find themselves in is fantastic. My favorite scene from this movie has always been where they go to this carnival, and they're all big fans of Babe Ruth, and as you know, he liked to chew tobacco, and so they get this big thing of tobacco, and they all start chewing it, and then they get on this ride that spins them around up in the air, and they're all having fun at first, and then they all start getting really, really sick. There's another great scene where one of them has a crush on this lifeguard at this pool, and so he drowns himself to get her to do CPR on him so he can kiss her. So, the situations and the things that happen in this movie are fantastic. One of the best scenes in this movie is this scene where they're playing baseball at night on the 4th of July, and they're all standing there looking up at this fireworks, and that's all it really is, but the way it's done, it's just so good. And the camera work in this movie, I always thought was pretty good too. It's a very funny movie. This movie is really, really funny. It's such a good time. If you don't like baseball, you could still like this movie. I like baseball, but I have to be there in person in order to watch it. I can't watch baseball on TV. The only sport I can find myself watching on TV is football. If you put on football, I'll sit there and watch football with you all day long on the TV. I love football, but every other sport I enjoy, but I have to be there in order to enjoy it. So, and you don't have to know anything about baseball. You don't have to be a baseball fan in order to like this movie, which is good because you know a lot of sports movies they kind of feel like, well, you wouldn't really get this movie if you weren't a fan of the sport, but not this movie. You don't have to give 2 craps about baseball to love this movie. This movie really shows this friendship that we all strive for because not every kid grows up having all these neighborhood buddies that they can go play with. I know for a lot of summers I didn't. When I was a kid, I had a lot of really lonely summers. And so this would have been the kind of thing that I would have loved. And so I feel like a lot of kids really lived out that dream through this film. And so this film really means a lot to people. And it's surprising too because the guy who directed this movie, David Mickey Evans, this is like the only good movie he's ever made. Other movies he made like The Sandlot 2, which I've heard is atrocious. Ace Ventura, Pet Detective Jr., I've heard that this is really bad. But he made a movie that means a lot to a lot of people. And you got to thank him for that. You really do. This movie also, because I told you I'd talk about spoilers, the ending of this movie is when Benny the Jet, he goes over the fence to get that baseball, and he jumps over the fence, and the dog chases him. And so he chases him like all throughout their town or their neighborhood or whatever. And it's one of the best chase scenes ever made. It is really, really good. It's filmed really well. It's intense. It's fun. It's funny. It's a really, really good climatic scene for this film. It's perfect. It's really like one of the best foot pursuit scenes in cinema history. But I just can't believe it took me so long to rewatch this movie. But I'm really, really glad I did. It is a phenomenal, phenomenal film. And The Sandlot, of course, gets a 100. Thank you so much for watching. Subscribe to Pilot Player Entertainment for more. Hit the like button. Leave me reviews, suggestions down in the comments down below. Follow me on Instagram and Tumblr at Pilot Player Entertainment for channel updates and written movie reviews. And play ball!